Welcome to HortTube, where we talk all things gardening. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is an Autumn Carnival Encore Azalea. This is Autumn Carnival Encore Azalea, a lower growing evergreen shrub that's low maintenance and has multiple bloom times. Autumn Carnival Encore Azalea is a compact growing variety that only reaches about 3 to 3.5 feet in height and about equal to that in width. In terms of growing zones for Encore Azaleas, they're very similar to traditional azaleas. They're going to be 6 to 9. Probably 6B to 9 is best, and 6A, if this was planted in any open space, it would almost certainly be damaged in not every winter, but a lot of winters. Autumn Carnival is a moderate grower. We might get 4 inches of growth in the ground out of these in a single season, which isn't too bad. I think this is a perfect little foundation plant because it doesn't grow too quickly that we're gonna have to prune it all the time, but it doesn't grow super slow either. In terms of sun or shade on Encore Azaleas, I think Encore Azaleas definitely need a little more sun than traditional azaleas. When these were first introduced and I was just a landscape company, we were planting these in very shady spaces. And I just don't think they performed quite as well. And I didn't think these were great azaleas, to be completely honest with you, at first. I didn't think that they were gonna be great plants. And then just kind of realized over time that these things actually need more sun. They need a half a day sun, and they can actually take almost full sun. I would probably lean toward a space that gets 4 or 5 hours of direct, sun during the middle part of the day as being kind of ideal, and not a full 15 hours of sun. But definitely more sun than traditional azaleas, and they perform absolutely fantastic given those conditions. Autumn Carnival would work great on a foundation, especially on a low foundation. If you have a low porch or windows that are 3 feet or less, this would be a great choice for that. And being evergreen, it's just a perfect foundation plant. It would also work well in mass plantings with other varieties of azaleas or Encore Azaleas or camellias. Camellias behind these would be fantastic because you could get the camellias blooming in the wintertime and get the azaleas blooming in the spring and the summer and early fall with the Encore varieties. Autumn Carnival has these amazingly large flowers for azaleas, maybe 2.5 or 3 inches across. Beautiful pink coloration on these. And the beauty of these Encore Azaleas is they do it multiple times a year. They'll do it during the traditional spring blooming time that all azaleas have. And then they'll repeat bloom in the summer and then again in the fall. The fall bloom here in zone 7, really, a lot of it depends on how far into the fall it stays mild. We're having a very mild fall this year, and this is November. This is actually November, and these things are in bloom. In terms of planting Autumn Carnival Encore Azaleas, similar to all azaleas, they're not going to want wet feet. They're not going to want to stay wet between rains. So first of all, don't put it in an area that's going to stay wet all the time. But then as a secondary precaution, we will mound these up a little above the existing grade to prevent them from staying wet. Dig the hole the depth of the root ball and probably twice as wide as the root ball. If you have heavy clay soils, it's best to mix in some pine bark soil conditioner. It's what these are being grown in with the clay. So you'll dig your hole, you'll have your little pile of clay, you'll mix 50% pine bark soil conditioner with the clay that you pulled out of the hole and use that material to replant it. We'll put about 2 inches of that mix back in the bottom of the hole. Pull your plant out of the container, stick it into the ground, and now it'll be sticking up about 2 inches, and we'll pull the rest of the soil mix up to the edge of that, tamp it down, water it in, and then lightly mulch this plant. You can use hardwood mulch, you can use pine straw, whatever you're using. Just fade it out before you reach the base of this plant. Don't bury anything that's not buried when you get it, or don't cover anything that's not covered when you get it. Another consideration you may have on azaleas, azaleas are pretty good at rooting into a container, and so frequently when you pull these out of the container, the roots will be kind of matted around the outside. If that's the case, pull at those some and get them going outward instead of continuing to wrap around one another. You may even cut into them a little bit with a knife, maybe a 1/2 inch deep or something in 3 spots. If you had very sandy soils, you might want to consider mixing in some compost or some peat moss rather than the pine bark soil conditioner. The soil conditioner will be great for drainage in the clay, but if it's very sandy, it could end up too dry at times, and the compost would help hold some moisture between waterings. In terms of watering, your Encore Azaleas. For the first 6 or 9 months, you're definitely going to want to check on these frequently. If they need to be watered, saturate the entire area all the way around the plant, not just right at the base of it. We want to encourage them to actually root out into the surrounding soil. Once they're established, if you're in an area that receives normal rainfall, you know, more than once or twice a month, you're probably not going to have to do a lot of ongoing watering on these. If it does become abnormally dry, do that same process of saturating the entire area around it. If you put these in a woodland garden, and these don't, I think these need some direct sun on them, so not in a deep wooded space, but if you put them in an area that had other tree competition or other shrub competition, you might want to consider putting in a drip hose before you mulch, after you've planted them and before you mulch, so in the future you can just hook a water hose to it and saturate that whole area, because trees are very good at stealing water from your other ornamental shrubs. Azaleas are acid-loving plants, and any fertilizer for acid-loving plants would be perfect on these. You can do it in the mid-spring. Some people say don't fertilize azaleas before they bloom, so you know, typically I'll just wait until the blooms are in decline. The spring flowering time on this plant is in decline, and that would be when I would do it. You can use any Azalea, Camellia, Rhododendron fertilizer on this that's slow release. That would be perfect just once in the spring season. You could even use holly tone on this plant if you're looking for an organic option. In terms of pruning your Encore Azaleas, and this will be true for pretty much all of them, you have a very short window on these between the spring flowering and them reblooming in mid to late summer to get them pruned. So as soon as they finish blooming in the spring, you want to get on it if you need to do any pruning on it. They kind of grow fairly orderly on their own, and they don't need a whole lot, but you'll get a crazy limb here and there. And if you need to just take it down 6 inches, that would be the time to do it, is right after their initial spring flowering. If you wait too long, you'll start to take off some of the buds that would have been for the summer flowering round. In terms of insect or disease problems on Encore Azaleas, and really all azaleas, they're all susceptible to lace bugs. That's an insect that if you have a lot of azaleas, you're almost certainly going to see it at some point. It never been that big of a deal to me. It will discolor the leaves. I usually just don't mind it. If they're in any kind of open space, and you can do that a little more with these Encore Azaleas, you can put them out in a little more open, sunnier spaces, they probably won't be as bad. But old-fashioned azaleas, we had to tuck them up in corners and things to keep a lot of the midday sun off of them, and I think it made them more vulnerable to lace bugs. Really, the other thing you'll get on all azaleas is Vitara Root Rot, and that can be taken care of by following some simple planting instructions of elevating them and not over mulching them so they don't stay too wet. And just don't plant them in a space that's abnormally wet in the first place, and you should be fine with that. So what are you waiting for? Even you can grow Autumn Carnival Encore Azaleas. Thank you for watching my video, and if it was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Also, comment below with any questions you have about Encore Azaleas. Thank you.